Iran taunts President Trump after an Iranian ship boldly breaks through the U.S. naval blockade on the very first day, exposing what many see as a major vulnerability in America's regional strategy. Cutting off own nose. A top aide to Mojtaba sharply mocks Trump, suggesting that this self-inflicted setback is like the U.S. deliberately harming itself in a futile attempt to dominate the Strait of Hormuz. Return empty-handed. Iran derides the U.S. military's latest operation as yet another humiliating failure, proclaiming that American forces will slink back without achieving any of their stated objectives in the tense Persian Gulf standoff. After failing to reopen the Hormuz Strait to unrestricted traffic as promised, the U.S. now embarrassingly fails even to block it effectively against determined Iranian vessels pushing back with defiance. Iran strongly condemned the United States as it launched a provocative naval blockade on the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz, escalating tensions in one of the world's most critical shipping lanes. Iran's IRGC Quds Force chief boldly declared that both the U.S. and Israel will ultimately return completely empty-handed from their aggressive maneuvers in the region. Brigadier General Esmaeil Qaani's pointed comments were prominently reported by the Iranian state-affiliated outlet Press TV on April 13, highlighting Tehran's unyielding stance. The U.S. on April 13 officially launched a comprehensive naval blockade aimed specifically at stopping ships from entering or exiting key Iranian ports along the Persian Gulf. However, fresh reports indicated that multiple commercial and cargo ships successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz despite the heavily publicized U.S. blockade efforts. An Iran-linked oil tanker along with several Chinese ships were reportedly able to transit freely amid the ongoing blockade, underscoring potential cracks in the American enforcement. The Quds Force commander said, quote, "The Unified Resistance Front has a powerful and effective presence throughout the region, and is lying in wait for the enemies of humanity. They will pull out of the region without any achievement." Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, Esmaeil Qaani, has also stepped forward to sharply criticize this controversial move directly on the social media platform known as X. The Iranian foreign ministry spokesman said, quote, "Can an illegal war of choice be won through a revenge of choice against the global economy? Is it ever worthwhile to cut off one's nose to spite one's face?" Unquote. Iran's military has issued a stern warning that any perceived threat directed towards its vital ports would inevitably trigger a much broader and more intense regional response across the area. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, has explicitly stated that no port located in the Persian Gulf or the Sea of Oman would remain secure or operational if its own ports were targeted or hit in any way. Iran's armed forces spokesperson said, quote, "Enemy-affiliated vessels do not and will not have the right to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Other vessels will be allowed to transit the strait in compliance with the regulations of the Armed Forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran." Unquote. Tensions in the Strait of Hormuz appeared to escalate on April 13 when the United States imposed a naval blockade targeting Iranian shipping, following the failure of prior diplomatic talks. Despite the newly enacted U.S. blockade, an oil tanker successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz, according to reports from U.S. military sources monitoring the waterway. The partially loaded oil tanker named Elpis managed to cross the strait on April 13, as detailed in a CNN report covering the incident amid heightened restrictions. The Elpis vessel reportedly cleared the narrow waterway without incident, even as the U.S. blockade was actively in place against Iranian-linked shipping traffic. The Elpis had been previously sanctioned by the United States due to its alleged connections to Iran's shadow oil trade network operating outside official channels. This transit occurred shortly after President Trump's announced blockade was set to begin, marking an early test of the enforcement measures in the strategic choke point. The development was reported by Iran International, which cited a CNN report confirming the tanker's passage through the restricted area. U.S. President Donald Trump said on April 12 that the U.S. Navy would move to lock down the Strait of Hormuz after negotiations with Iran failed to produce a lasting agreement. Trump also declared that U.S. forces would intercept, on global seas, any ship that continued to pay transit tolls or fees to Iran, signaling a bid to choke off Tehran's maritime revenue. Later, the U.S. military announced that a naval blockade on Iran would formally begin from 10 a.m. Eastern Time on April 13, setting a precise start time for the operation. American commanders stated that they would seek to blockade all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports, dramatically tightening pressure on Tehran's trade routes. Meanwhile, uncertainty continues to affect other ships navigating the narrow Strait of Hormuz, with many operators hesitant amid the evolving restrictions. The Botswana-registered tanker Oster IA abruptly turned back just minutes after the US deadline passed, altering its course away from the blockade zone. Another vessel, the Rich Starry, reportedly drifted near Iran's Keshem Island, effectively stalling its movement as shipping patterns shifted. Shipping data shows hundreds of vessels are now stranded on either side of the Hormuz choke point, unable to proceed due to the imposed restrictions. This bottleneck at the key global oil waterway carries serious implications for international energy markets, potentially disrupting supply chains worldwide.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.